I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Angie Martz. I am AAF Roanoke's president this year. And I'd like to welcome you to this event, our Blog Like a Boss, Storytelling for SEO Success. This is, I think, our fifth virtual program of the year, which we've had good attendance at, and I thank you all for attending. I'd like to introduce you to Carrie Cousins. Carrie is a seasoned digital marketer and content strategist with a passion for storytelling. With extensive experience in crafting engaging narratives for online audience, she specializes in leveraging the power of human-centric content to drive SEO success. Carrie is the Director of Digital Marketing at LeadPoint Digital in Roanoke. She is a past president of AAF Roanoke, and she continues to serve on our board. She is also Lieutenant Governor of our AAF District 3, which represents Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. She's also an adjunct professor at the School of Communications in Virginia Tech. Additionally, Carrie does pro bono work for nonprofits in the area. She trains for and runs marathons on a fairly regular basis, and she was most recently featured as a remarkable woman by a local news station, WFXR. So thank you, Carrie, for being our speaker today. You have a lot of credits to your name, and we appreciate your leadership and your contribution to this program. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you. That was a very lovely introduction. Like, I did not write that. Thank you so much. So we're going to talk a little bit about blogging today and just a little background for those of you who don't know me and my credentials to talk about this topic. I've actually blogged a lot. My portfolio has well over 1,500 authored blogs on it. So that's content that appears on other websites under my byline. I've probably ghostwritten another 1,000+ blog articles for various clients. And some of these are clients you might know, such as Fast Company, Square, Web Designer Depot, The Next Web, and Give WP. I'm not going to tell you have to read all this stuff, but if you want to go read some of it, you can find it all on my writing portfolio. I mean, I will make these slides available after so you can actually click the links. And if at any point during this talk, it's great to be interactive. I love questions. I'm going to kick Angie to just let me know if there are any questions in the comments to flag me, because it's hard to monitor chat at the same time as walking through slides. So I hope this is structured in a way that can give you some practical tips. So we're going to walk through some things you can start doing today to help you blog more efficiently and actually boost your blog credits in the search engines. So it all starts with doing your homework. You need to know what you're writing about and why you are writing it. If you don't know what and why, you probably don't need to be writing about something. You should plan to tell a story so that readers get a feel for what you're talking about. A story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So you need to have an actual story that has a purpose if you want to write a blog. That's the big foundation. So as you're thinking about your homework, you need to know a few things. You need to know who you want to talk to. That's your audience. What keywords are important? So what am I trying to actually rank for in a search engine by writing this blog? Why people should care. If your audience doesn't care, then why are you writing it? And what should users do next after they read your blog? Like, there's no point in just reading a blog and saying, okay, I read it, I'm done. There should be something for someone to do when they're finished. It might be buying a product. It might be signing up for your email. It might be heading over to YouTube to watch a new video, but there should be something for a user to do when they finish reading your blog content every single time. Then we get into a little bit of the technical part. You want to use smart URLs. Yes, the URL is actually important. If I were doing this in a live room, I would ask everybody to raise their hands if the URLs on their website had actual words in them versus a combination of random letters and numbers. Most of the time, the room is pretty split. You actually want a URL that contains words that describes the content on the page you are going to. There's kind of a magic formula for it. It should start with HTTPS. That means your site is actually secure. If you don't have the S on your HTTP in 2024, you're doing yourself a major disservice. Then it's your actual domain name, so your website name, followed by a slash. Then normally the category of content, if you're on a blog, most blogs have categories, so the category name would be inserted there. Then another slash and a short version of your headline. You don't need all the words, you just need the meaningful words of your headline. So knock it down to something that feels like it says something, but you don't want it to have 30 words up there. You can drop all the stop words from your URLs. So the ands, ors, ofs, a's, articles, you don't need them. And we want to use all lowercase letters. No one is trying to put in capital letters to access something on the web. So don't think you're being cute or smart by adding caps. You're just getting in the way and being a little confusing. Next is you want to know your keywords. So in your homework, we assigned you to think about what keywords were important to your blog post. And this is where I come into Keyword Cubed. Keywords need to be used a minimum of 3 times in a blog post. Now, I'm not saying 3 times and stop. It really depends on the length of your content. I'm also not saying to do it 30 times because that looks like stuffing. So really what your magic formula starts with is, where do I start with the keyword? And that means first I want to use it in the headline. That signals search engines that this word is important to the content that's going to follow. Then I'm going to use my keyword again in the first paragraph. That's another signal that that's what this blog post is about. And finally, I'm going to use that keyword somewhere in a subhead throughout the content. That's an additional signal that the keyword is important. Now, keywords can have various forms. So if my keyword for the day is, when does the rain stop? We're going to go with a long tail phrase keyword, right? The other variations of that might be stop raining. So thinking about things that are similar but not direct duplications are also acceptable when you're looking at your keywords. As you're framing the post, you want to put together one thought per paragraph. One of the biggest problems I see with blogs is people write them like novels. If I hop onto your website and your blog paragraphs are amazingly long, I mentally shut down. That's a lot of work for me as a reader. It's hard to digest and it's difficult to look at. So breaking paragraphs into short, chunky bits with one thought in each is a lot more digestible for a reader. So each paragraph should have a theme. You're probably talking 3 to 5 sentences at the most. And there is a magic formula for that. You want to start with a statement. This is what this paragraph is about. And then you want to support it with facts or metrics. This is why it's important. This is why it matters. And then finish it up with a quote or a statement or a thought that kind of brings it all home. As you're getting ready to put your content on your website, you're going to want to clean it. Yes, we do recommend writing in Microsoft Word or a Google Sheet or something like that, so that if the inevitable happens, you've got a backup copy of your content, right? You don't want to lose it because you wrote it in your CMS. But you also will bring over a lot of nasty HTML if you copy and paste directly from a program like Microsoft Word to your CMS. Sometimes you can see this nasty stuff. Sometimes you can't see this nasty stuff. Sometimes search engines can see it even if you can't. It tends to just make a mess out of your copy and make it more complicated for search engines to read. It can also make it a little bit more difficult for humans to read. So make sure you take your copy, paste it in a tool such as TextEdit or Notepad, then make it plain text, and then copy and paste it into your CMS. From there, we want to make sure we're using really nice hierarchy in our blog post to help search engines understand what's most important, as well as help readers find scannable places and things to hop onto throughout the copy to give them extra entry points. So in your website, there is a structure of header tags. They probably show up in the back end of your website as H1, H2, H3, and so on. Those aren't just styles. They actually mean things to search engines. The page title or header, usually that's the blog post title, should be the H1 on your blog post page. Below that, your subheaders will use the other H tags. Excuse me. That's H2 through H6. You may only have an H2 and H3. You don't have to have 6 of them. H2s and H3s are great for subheads and allow you to rank content, as well as apply some additional styling to make copy bigger or jump out or be obvious to a reader. You also want to use your primary keyword in those H tags. Sorry, the pollen is on today. While you're thinking about those subheads, you want to make sure that your content is scannable through and through. When we used to talk about newspapers and newspaper design a long time ago, we really focused on giving people multiple entry points. The same thing is true of your blog. You want to give people lots of different ways to get into the content. If you just give me a long list of copy, I'm going to have a really hard time reading all of it. Remember, we do not have a long attention spans. Less than a goldfish. That's less than 9 seconds to get someone's attention and potentially keep it while they're reading your post. Subheads help break up the main copy. I tend to try to use one for every new idea that I introduce in my blog post and try to have one for every 4 to 5 paragraphs. This makes everything happen with a nice cadence. You almost should always see a new subhead on every scroll. It makes things easier to read. And then think about using lists for short blocks under those subheads. There's a reason that listicles are so popular online. It's because they're quick, they're easy to read. Even in a long form blog post, using some lists here and there can make your content more digestible for humans and more digestible for search engines. And as we use the word accessible, you want to think about that throughout your blog copy. Accessible content wins the internet right now. And accessible content is content that works both for a normal ability person and anybody with any type of disability. That could be that your content works on a screen reader for someone who has a vision impairment. It may mean adding descriptions or tooltips that add understanding to things that might not be as easily understandable or well known. Probably the easiest best practice that you can do is make sure that every photo on your website has an alt description. So whatever image you upload with that blog post, you need to describe what's happening in the photo. That ensures that a screen reader can read the image because they don't know what's in the picture otherwise. It also means search engines can read what's in the picture. The win for accessibility purposes is you get better search engine results because your website is more usable and has more elements that can be read by search engines, and more people spend more time on your website, giving you a higher domain authority. Then you want to do a keyword check for your blog post. You've got it sitting in your CMS at this point. You've got your multiple entry points. You're looking for ways to make sure this is really easy and digestible for people. And that's where you go through one more time and say, where could I naturally place a keyword that maybe it is missing? So making sure that primary keyword is in your headline. Maybe it's in a bullet list somewhere. You've got an internal or external link that uses that keyword and goes to another page with relevant information. It may also be part of a photo title for a photo that you uploaded to your page. These are lots of very natural ways to use your keywords without feeling too spammy, and by using something that feels supernatural. When you come to think about images, the image size matters. And that is for everything on your website, particularly blog posts. Some of us tend to use photo galleries, videos, and multiple images in a blog post. Your blog will load extremely slowly if you don't size these images appropriately for the page that you're putting them on. That means making sure that they are close in pixel size for your aspect ratio on your page, and also compressing your images in a web-friendly format, such as a JPEG, a PNG, or a WebP. Video works best when you use a link from YouTube or Vimeo rather than a direct upload. Direct upload of video is a huge file that you're expecting users to download when they visit your site. The other thing that I like to tell people when they're thinking about blogging is if you pick a default image size that's common, it makes everything really easy for you later on. So my recommendation is to crop your images for your blog post to 1200 by 628 pixels. This is the standard size and aspect ratio for social media sharing, and ensures that if someone clicks your link and shares your blog post, that it's going to render and show up with an image exactly as you would expect it to, and not with an odd crop that you haven't been able to control. And for those of you who don't recognize my friend, the panda over here on this slide, he is the mascot for Tiny PNG. Tiny PNG is a wonderful free tool. You can upload your images to Tiny PNG and it will spit back out compressed but still sharp images that you can upload to your website. So if you're not a huge Photoshop user and you need some help with file compression, this is a great place to start. The next element when you're thinking about blogging is, how long should my blog post be? Now, the human answer is it needs to be enough to tell your story well. That's the answer that wins every time. But then I start to think about the technical answer, because I want search engines to read my blog posts too. You want a post that's no less than 300 words if you want Google to find your blog post and register it well. What we are starting to see is that longer form content, thinking 2,000, 2,500 words, is actually ranking higher in search engines than the shorter content. So the chart here on this slide shows you the average content length of a blog post in relationship to the average Google search rank position of that content. So you can see that long form content is doing exceptionally well in search engines. Now, the caveat to that is it has to be good long form content. You can't just repeat yourself over and over again. You have to actually have something that has 2,000 words worth of story to tell. So when I get down to the technical part, I also like tools to help. Google and users need to understand your posts. I feel like that's the big emphasis of this session, right? We're writing for humans, but we're also doing some technical stuff to help search engines understand this. A tool such as Yoast, which is free, can help it make it very easy for you to add meta titles and descriptions to each of your blog posts. If you're not sure what a meta title and description is, if you look over on the right side of your screen, you'll see some actual search engine results for Australian Shepherds. The blue linked information That is the title of each of these pages. So that's the meta title. You can control the meta title with a tool like Yoast. For blogs, it's often the blog post title, but sometimes it's a little bit different depending on how long your blog post title is. This information right below it is the meta description. You can also control that. If you look at each of the 3 descriptions that are rendering, 2 of them have ellipses, which means they were a little bit too long and you don't get the full description in the search engine. The one at the bottom from Dog Time, you get the full description because they wrote it to the appropriate length. The nice thing about having a tool to help you with this stuff is it'll help you with the word count and the character count so that you're writing these descriptions for optimum length so that they fully render in search results. There's also a little bit of an art to writing these titles and descriptions. You want them to be interesting and engaging and actually include a call to action that makes a user look at your description in Google and decide that your link is the one to click. So all of this stuff is not just for text. It's for your video blogs as well. YouTube is one such example of that that's really popular. Video content also needs copy to go with it. Just like a search engine can't read a photo, a search engine can't read a video. So adding good descriptions, much like a very short version of a blog post, can help search engines understand your video content better, whether you're putting your video content on YouTube or you're importing your YouTube video to your blog itself. Don't just put your video on a page with a title and think that's enough. You need some sort of descriptive language to help people understand what's in that video. YouTube has its own set of SEO guidelines as well, and has some suggestions for where to use keywords, such as in the video title, the video description, and video tags to help you understand what that video is about if it only exists on YouTube. So many of the same best practices that you would use for your blog, you should use in your descriptions if you're only posting to YouTube instead of a traditional blog. This is my favorite tip for anybody doing anything online, is you got to get rid of the dead ends. If I get to the end of your blog post and there is nothing for me to do there, you've lost me, right? You want me to keep clicking on your website. You want me to buy whatever you're selling. You want me to donate to your nonprofit. You want me to join you on your social media channels. But you have to tell me to do those things. So make sure at the end of every piece of content that you post, there is something to do next. Generally, what happens on blogs is there's related content. That's a very common next thing to do on a blog, but it doesn't have to be the only thing to do. So don't forget to give your readers a prize, reward them for getting to the end of your content. Because if they read all the way to the end of your blog, 1, they should get a gold star because most people don't do it. But 2, you need to give them something else to do because they are someone who's very interested in what you're doing and is more likely to engage with you. And as you get close to that final publication check, make sure you check your grammar. Nothing hurts your credibility like a spelling error or a typo or a mislocation. I love Grammarly. Grammarly is another one of those tools that has a free version and a paid version. It's super easy to use. It works both with tools like Microsoft Word and Google Sheets, but it also integrates with your browser. So if you missed the typo, you paste it in your CMS, Grammarly will check it one more time right there in your CMS so you can make sure that you don't have any silly errors. Be wary of the AI suggestions in the grammar checkers. Some of them are great. If you like it, use it, but some of them will add changes that aren't right for you. So The thing that a lot of the grammar checkers do is they can lose a little bit of your voice. So make sure when you're making those changes and applying those changes, you're applying them for grammatical purposes and don't lose your own voice and storytelling in the process. And then you're going to proof it. You're going to proof it. And then you're going to proof it one more time just to be sure. Proofing isn't just reading. It's making sure that the copy looks great. The right photo is there with your content. The video link is right. All the links go to the place that you expect the links to go to. And that the URL is what you want the URL to be. So anything that you've touched in the process of putting your blog post together, now is the time to touch it one more time and make sure it's right. For those of us that work in a small team or on a one-person team, the biggest challenge with proofing can be finding your own mistakes if you don't have another person to read behind you. The trick that's always worked for me is actually to start at the end of my blog post and read every sentence in reverse order from the bottom to the top. This forces you to read the words that are there, not the words that you think you wrote in the order that you think you wrote them. It's a really quick and easy way to find a plethora of mistakes, especially some of those really silly ones that you tend to make on your own repeatedly. I tend to drop articles in sentences really quickly. It's a common problem for me. And reading backwards, I can find a lot of those dropped articles when I'm reading backwards. And then this is my last tip. We've made it through in about half an hour, so we'll have plenty of time for a Q&A. And that's to write for humans. Like, all of these other blog tips are great, but you don't want to sacrifice your storytelling. So tell a good story that people want to read. Remember to focus on your beginning, your middle, and your end. And having a little bit of conflict in there with some sort of resolution is actually really helpful. You wouldn't read a novel if it read like a term paper, right? You read it because it's interesting and you want to be part of the storyline. You want to feel like you belong with the characters. This is where human writing is far superior to what we're getting from AI right now. AI's got a pretty distinct formula that doesn't feel as authentic as human copywriting. Shoot for that human feel, right? Like, you do not want to just put a prompt into ChatGPT and throw it on your website because you can. Yes, it's fast. Yes, it's easy. But does it tell a story? Does it feel like your brand? And then there's this little SEO problem with using straight AI copy on your website. That same copy could be on another website somewhere else and lead to duplicate copy issues in the eyes of search engines. You're not technically plagiarizing because it came from AI, but it's not considered original either. And all of the search engines reward us for having unique, original content. That comes with writing your own story each and every time. Okay, I'm at the point of questions. Sorry if I rolled through that really quickly.
There are none in the chat right now, so if you want to turn your camera on and ask a question, feel free. I will lead off with a question. So years ago, I had somebody tell me about proofreading backwards, but she did a word at a time backwards. I think the way you described it, and I just want confirmation, is that you read the sentences forward, but you did them in reverse order.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
So you're reading one sentence at a time instead of reading like a paragraph at a time.
So both work if you ever want to do the other one as well. It just doesn't make sense. You wouldn't get the context.
Only read one word at a time.
I mean, literally, this was like 30 years ago. But that's how she caught word mistakes, not grammar.
Spelling. I could see that being great for spelling.
Right. Any other questions?
Anybody have gnarly blog content that they write regularly? I know some of you have, like, I can tell by some of the names that some of your content is easier to work on than others.
Shameless plugs are welcome.
I think everyone's eating today.
So what about all of these recipe blogs that have so many things that interrupt the copy? So ads versus pictures versus whatever. They're so hard to digest.
They're
No pun
incredibly,
intended.
they are incredibly hard to digest, but recipes have a unique formula that you kind of will deal with the disruption because you really want what's at the end. And most other blog formats cannot get away with what recipes get away with. Like, your content has to be so desirable, usually because they've showed me a picture at the top that is so mouth-watering. I have to have that for dinner. Or I've seen a quick video that makes it look really easy and I want to try it. That stuff can be great because it creates long form content, right? Many of these recipe blogs will have a 2,000 word description about how they fixed it or what they were doing in their home while they were working on it before they ever get to the recipe. And that's really to help search engines understand the content a little bit better because it uses lots of keywords for the food. Recipes are generally very short. It also gives them something to copyright. If you are a writer and you're trying to uniquely publish something, a recipe is not copyrightable content. So yes, you can post a recipe and you can have a recipe blog, but you really have nothing to copyright. But the minute you tell a narrative about your cooking and you create some storytelling around it, you've got copyrightable material.
Great. So we got a couple of comments, questions, suggestion on where to get content ideas from.
So this is actually where I'm going to let you use ChatGPT. It's great as a brainstorming tool. So put some prompts in, see what kind of ideas you get back. The other thing I strongly recommend is if you have analytics on your website, looking at what people are looking at and for on your website. I have always been a big fan of using the search query. So when people type in the search bar on your website, taking that content and analyzing it and figuring out, do I need to write a blog post that answers questions for common queries on my website? And then finally, think about your overall goals for what your website is supposed to do and put together a list of keywords and develop content that's about and around those keywords. You can use a tool like ChatGPT. There are some others out there that you can put keywords in and it'll give you some ideas. Then there's the old-fashioned just Google it, right? If you know what your keyword is or you know what you have on your website that's important, Google it and see what other answers come up. Who else is ranking for those keywords? What content is ranking for those keywords? And is it content that's like yours or unlike yours? Are you creating something new?
Great. And the next question, is it best to get the technical issues out first before getting the content?
This is the chicken or the egg question. So I think the writing comes first. The only technical issue that comes first is your goal, right? Why am I writing this? Who am I writing this for? Then I tend to actually do the writing, get it ready to post, and then kind of go back through and go, if I change this subhead by one word, I can get an extra keyword in here. Or if I, turn this paragraph into a bulleted list, it'll be a little bit easier to digest. So I really do start with the writing and the storytelling and then come back and put a technical eye on it. Part of this is because, I came up in more of the creative side, not the technical side. The other part of this is remember who you are writing for. You should be writing for people first and search engines second. And so I try to frame my content with that in mind. If I give up a piece of technical SEO to tell a better story for a user, I'm going to make that choice every single time.
Do you have an example of one of your best success stories for a blog post?
Ooh, that's a hard one. I mean, I guess the success story is different by client. I would say one of the blog posts that I didn't expect to go far, we'll pull something random out of my portfolio, is I have done a lot of blogging for a company called Give WP. They are a company that has a tool for nonprofits for their WordPress site. So they do a lot of blogging on things nonprofits can do to like be better at being a nonprofit. And I've had a few pieces on that blog that particularly one that was about end of year giving tips that I didn't feel like was a huge deal breaker, change maker type post, but I got a ton of feedback on it from nonprofits who appreciated that everything in the blog post was something they could do without having to go get extra budget. And many of the comparable posts that were being posted by other places at the time required them to ask for budget to get the work done. So thinking about usefulness when you're blogging can be really, really important. And thinking about usefulness in terms of your audience, right? I knew I was writing for nonprofits, probably who don't have a lot of money or resources. And if I could give them a list of things they could do to help spur donations at the end of the year without asking their bosses for additional money to do it, that would be more well received than I gave them a list of tools to go by.
Thank you. Have you had a chance to work with Adobe Analytics? Have you heard of similarities or differences when compared to Google?
I have not worked with Adobe Analytics, so I don't feel like I can answer that question at all. Sorry, whoever asked.
If anybody in attendance has an answer to that, feel free to answer. We can open it up to everybody.
I have a little bit of experience with Adobe Analytics. I don't think there's a huge difference. It's more complicated than Google Analytics. It's harder to set up and to set up right. But it is better in terms of automated reporting and specific reports. Like once those are set up, those can be really easy. GA4 has kind of moved in the direction of Adobe Analytics in that regard. But GA4 and Google Analytics is still way easier than Adobe, and Adobe's very cost prohibitive as well.
Great, thanks, Ryan. All right, there are no more questions listed, so thank you, Carrie, for your insight and information, and thank you everyone who was able to attend. Our club year is kind of winding down a little bit as we look towards a new board starting July 1. There might be one or two more events, so keep an eye out for our newsletters for that. If you are not on our newsletter, or if you know of someone who would like to be in our newsletter, feel free to drop us a line and we'll be glad to add them onto the email list. Thank you, everybody, and have a great 17-minute lunch.
Thank you.